In 1871, a fire leveled more than 3 square miles of a major American city in under 2 days. What got built afterward changed how every tall building on Earth is made. Here's the real chain. By the 1870s, Chicago had grown explosively, and most of it, including entire commercial districts, was built almost entirely out of wood. A dry summer left the city primed to burn. On the night of October 8th, a fire broke out and, driven by wind, tore through the city almost unopposed. By the time it burned out 2 days later, roughly 17,000 structures were destroyed, and an estimated 100,000 people were left without homes. The scale of the destruction meant Chicago wasn't just repairing buildings, it was rebuilding an entire city core from nothing, all at once. City leaders moved fast, passing new fire codes that restricted wood construction downtown and pushed builders toward brick, stone, and iron instead. At the same time, Chicago's economy was booming, and land in the rebuilt downtown became extremely valuable. Builders had every incentive to build taller instead of wider. But traditional masonry construction had a hard limit. The taller a building went, the thicker its ground floor walls had to be, just to hold the weight above. Past around 10 stories, that thickness started eating too much usable floor space to make any economic sense at all. An engineer named William LeBaron Jenney, working in the rebuilt city, proposed a different approach entirely. Let a skeleton of iron and steel carry the building's weight instead of the walls. In this design, the outer walls became a curtain, essentially a shell hung on the frame, no longer responsible for holding the building up at all. Jenney's home insurance building, completed in 1885, is widely credited as the first structure to use this true steel skeleton framing method. It rose 10 stories, modest by today's standard, but it proved the concept worked, and a wave of Chicago architects immediately began building on the idea. This group of architects and engineers working in the rebuilt city became known as the Chicago School, and their steel frame method spread far beyond Chicago within a decade. Steel framing solved another problem, too. It distributed weight in a way that made buildings dramatically more resistant to fire compared to older wooden construction. That fire resistance fed directly back into building codes, and cities across the country began requiring steel and masonry construction for anything built above a certain height. Steel framing alone wasn't enough to make truly tall buildings practical, though. Without a fast way to move people upward, height still had a hard human limit around 6 or 7 flights of stairs. The safety elevator, made reliable a few decades earlier, became the missing piece. Paired with a steel skeleton, there was now no real limit on how high a building could rise. New York took the idea and pushed it further, and by the early 1900s, the skyscraper had become a genuine architectural race between cities. Buildings like the Woolworth Building and later the Empire State Building were direct descendants of the structural method proven in rebuilt Chicago decades earlier. Modern building codes worldwide still trace their steel frame height and fire safety standards back through this same lineage, refined over a century but structurally unchanged at its core. Every glass and steel tower on a modern skyline exists because a city burned to the ground and had no choice but to build back smarter. Follow Forgotten Record for more Real Chain's history.